Good morning. Today we will be reading Matthew 18, 1 through 6. At the same time came the disciples unto Jesus, saying, Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus called a little child unto him, and set him in the midst of them, and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted, and become as little children, ye shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child is the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receiveth me. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believeth in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea.
Does everybody feel like a little child here today? Don't get easier as we get older, but anyway, we think about what's happening in this country today, and especially when we look like this last couple of years with this COVID and how they've shut schools down, kids weren't able to go to school. And, they lost a lot of education, a lot of time to be together and to grow. And so it's been a rough couple of years, I think, for the young people. And I know that a lot of the country churches are small, or country schools are small towns and stuff. A lot of them kept school going, but there's been so many of them in the east and in the west that shut down, and it's, of course, I think a lot of it was the NEA, the teachers organization, that they were looking more after the teachers and not the kids, I'm afraid. But so it's been a rough time, I think, for the kids, and I guess maybe if some good come out of it is more and more kids now are going to charter schools, Christian schools, home, doing it at home, and are not maybe getting taught some of this stuff that they're teaching in the bigger schools in liberal areas. And so anyway, as we see what's happening in our country, not very happy, but a lot of people are coming to America. They want to get out of the socialism, the communism, or the dictatorships, or the things that's going on in their country, and to come here because we've had the freedoms, but we seem to be going toward them, what they're trying to get away from. And so, anyway, just we think about what's going on with the kids today and what they're being taught or not taught. And I want to go again to what was read in their scripture and think about what Jesus is saying here. And of course he was together with the disciples. And starting verse 2 again, he called the little children and had them stand among him. And he said, I tell you the truth, unless you change and become as the little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. And when you think about what does Jesus, maybe what's he talking about here? What does he mean? And when we think about little kids, and they're trusting. They have, say, trust in their parents or faith in their parents. We can kind of term it as faith, but you can go up and you can tell a little 5-year-old, I'm Superman. Whoa, good, I get to be with Superman. Or, here's Santa Claus over here. Great, I want to go see Santa Claus. They do it without reservation. They just, they accept it as is. And, we need to accept Jesus as who he is, what it says in here. And we can't. It's hard to, figure it. We had a pastor, new pastor, he just through seminary come, and he he didn't believe, well, Jesus couldn't been born of a virgin because it's, scientifically impossible. He couldn't raise from the dead because it's scientifically impossible. But, we have to do it on faith, God did what he wanted to do, and sending Jesus here like that was what he did. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes a little child in my name, welcomes me. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and thrown in the sea. So, we hear all these things, and I listen to the news probably too much, but what's going on in this country today? And of course, we know about abortions and what it is, and I guess it's kind of sad what they did in Kansas here a while back, but killing babies before they're born. Wonder how would Jesus feel about that? How would God feel about that? And we see these 5 and 6 year olds just starting to school, starting out in life, and now they're trying to teach them about homosexuality or transgender stuff. And, we know it says in the Bible that homosexuality is a sin. And here it says it's better, if they're going to cause these little ones to sin, to live a lifestyle of sin, it'd been better to be thrown in the ocean and drowned. So they're teaching them a lot of the wrong things, and you've probably heard too that if parents go to a parent-teacher meeting, well, they've been labeled as terrorists. So it really what's happening to our kids? What's going to become of them? And just here this last week or so, they showed it in Iowa, which is a farm, kind of a country state, you might say, and had drag queens in the schools, and the stuff that they're trying to teach our kids and stuff is pretty sad anyway. And and you think back, as early as maybe in the 1950s, they were still using Bibles in some schools for teaching history or just for teaching. And now then, if a kid took the Bible to school, he'd probably be thrown out of it and sent home. And so we went so far the other way, what they allow in the schools and compared to what it used to be. And of course, we know about the drugs in the schools today, and now they're trying to legalize marijuana. We did a mission trip down in southern Louisiana after Hurricane Andrew come in. And the school is Baldwin, Louisiana, town maybe the size of Colby, thereabouts. But they had you thought they was in prison. They had a big high fence with barbed wire on the top around it. They had a guard station and everything. But it was just to keep the people out from bringing drugs in. And this was 30 some years or 30 years ago. And it's just got worse. So we got to know what's going on in our school system, and it's not good. And of course now we got this fentanyl coming across the border that's killing average about 300 people a day. And a lot of them are young people because they got started on marijuana or on other crack or cocaine and stuff. And they take these, and it's just like taking a death pill because it's very deadly, and and they're letting this happen, and so it just kind of goes on and on. Seems to be getting worse. In chapter 19, I'm going to read verse 13, 14. Then little children were brought to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked those who brought them. Jesus says, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." So here, we see the disciples. They were, well, let him talk and don't let the little kids bother him, interfere him. But he says, let them come, because the kingdom of heaven is like that, the little child. And, I guess one thing that we see today is the truth is not coming out about what's going on, and if they don't like what's happening, the media they don't bring it out. But and we're losing a lot of our freedoms, and when we look in the Bill of Rights, just the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting or establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And we think back when the founding fathers, the pilgrims from early on come over, they wanted to come over here for freedom of religion, was a lot of it. And because that's in England, the Anglican Church kind of the government run the church, and they wanted to get away from it and be able to have the freedom of religion to worship as they pleased. And of course, then it goes on about freedom of speech and of the press and stuff. But they wanted that freedom of religion, and and we talked a little bit about it in Sunday school. But they tried to shut the churches down when the COVID stuff started, and we was at a church in Washington then, but they kept the tattoo parlors open, the abortion clinics open, drug places open, but they shut the churches down. And so they were trying to take away the freedoms that were in the Constitution. And then it goes in the Second Amendment, of course, is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And they kept it to just help stop a tyrannical government, which is kind of what we're getting into now. So here's some of the freedoms that we're gradually losing and are being taken away from us. And so, of course, they talked about the separation of the church and state, and it was to keep the state out of the church, not the church out of the state. And so we can express our feelings and stuff, but most of them won't because they're afraid they'll get sued. And so it's a hard thing to decide on and what to do. And in school now, we're getting this transgender stuff to where boys can run in girls' sports. And they had, now the Title IX used to make it even so the girls had the same chance at sports as the boys did. And now they're trying to make the transgender, the Title IX more about transgender and let the the boys that wants to be a girl run in their sports. And so it's I don't know, it's aggravating. You know, when we look at the schools, you get uphill a ways, like the Ivy League. Most of them schools were started as Christian schools and by Christians. And now then, you know, they're about as far from it as you can get. So here again, as the kids get bigger, they're being taught so many things that are against Christianity and against freedom. And it goes on. And they'll have communist or terrorist speakers in there, but they won't let Christian or conservative speakers come to the church or into the college. And, you know, here a few years ago, one of the coaches out in Washington that prayed with the kids before the football game, he got fired for praying. It's okay if you go out there and cuss the kids, but don't pray with them. You know, so it just goes on and on. Planned Parenthood now wanting to put their facilities in schools, and so girls can get an abortion, and the folks not even know about it. And so, you know, I think it's back in 1847, a guy named Manning's the one that started the public education, but it was started to, it'd been basically Christian education and from the Bible and stuff, but he started it to kind of go against Christian education. So that's how our government education started. And so anyway, and you know what they teach, what you can learn. Of course, we know about evolution and versus creationism. And one of the guys, his name was Bob, but here a number of years ago, I talked to him about going to church, and he says, well, he just couldn't believe it. He says, you read the first page of the Bible, and it says, you know, in the beginning God created. Well, he went to school, and he believed in evolution. So he says, I couldn't believe that from the first deal. So we spent about 2 years going versus, you know, creation versus evolution, and he turned around and got saved. But when they teach things that are against, you know, what we believe, what the Bible says, it's having a lot of effect on kids. And so it's sad that it's got to be that way. Got something here. You've probably heard of him, Judge Roy Moore from Alabama, come out, and this is something he wrote. This was 25 years ago. I'll just read the whole thing. Judge Roy Moore of Alabama refused the order of another judge to remove the 10 Commandments from his courtroom and to stop opening his court with daily prayer. May God bless Judge Moore. The incident made national news. Judge Moore modified a poem by Peter Marshall, and it follows. America the Beautiful. America the Beautiful, or so it used to be. Land of pilgrim pride, I'm glad they'll never see. Babies piled in dumpsters, abortion on demand. Oh, sweet land of liberty, your house is on the sand. Our children wander aimlessly, poisoned by cocaine, choosing to indulge their lust when God has said abstain. From sea to shining sea, our nation turns away from the teaching of God's love and the need to always pray. So many worldly pastors tell lies about the rock, saying God is going broke so they can fleece the flock. We've kept God in our temple. How calloused we have grown, when earth is but his footstool and heaven is his throne. We voted in a government that's rotting at the core, appointing godless judges that throw reason out the door. Too soft to place a killer in a well-deserved tomb, but brave enough to kill a baby before it leaves the womb. You think that God's not angry, that our land's a moral slum? How much longer will he wait before his judgment comes? How are we to face a God from whom we cannot hide. What then is left for us to do but stem this evil tide? If we who are his children will humbly turn and pray, seek his holy face, and amend our evil ways, then God will hear from heaven and forgive us of our sins. He'll heal our sickly land and those who live within. But America the beautiful, if you don't, then you will see a sad but holy God withdraw his hands from me. So, Judge Moore wrote this 25 years ago, and we just think how much it's went downhill in the last 25 years. So, I'm reading Matthew 11. Here again, we think about what Jesus is saying about kids. Matthew 11:25. At this time, Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. I was thinking about some of the things that you hear and that people say. Here a couple of years ago, Bill Gates, and I think we know who he is. He probably would be considered learned or intelligent, what he done. But he says cows are worse than cars for pollution. And I heard somebody say, well, you go stand in a garage with a car running, and I'll go stand in a barn with a cow, and we'll see who lives the longest, So might get a little smelly in there with that cow, but you're going to live through it, people who we consider to learn at the colleges and you get in the difference between evolution and creation. And, you can get some guys like Ken Ham or some of them that really are into creationism. And, it's pretty amazing to what they found out and stuff. And where versus evolution, they say, well, you got to have a lot of faith to believe in God, but you got to have a lot of faith to believe that all what we have here and people and everything come from nothing, because that's where the evolutionists are when you get into the major evolution. And is knowledge more important than faith? If we can have knowledge, and unless we do something with it or use it, it don't mean much. But I think wisdom comes with knowledge and faith, knowing how to apply what you do know. I was involved on jury a couple different times, one for a week and one for 2 weeks. One thing that impressed me, what the judge said before we went in, he says, you're going to go in here, you're going to hear two different things. And, the one will say this, the other will say that, and he says, you're going to have to use common sense to who's telling the truth, because somebody's not being truthful. And you could get people up there, they could have 6 different degrees from 6 great colleges, and he's the authority on this. And then the other guy will get up there, 6 different degrees from the same 6 colleges, and he'll just tell you just the opposite. So it's all about where the money comes from. So we have to use common sense when we hear about evolution and creation. And what makes the most sense? Where's the truth at? And there's when we think about children and sometimes our grandkids, I can remember when the youngest granddaughter, she's 2 or 3, and she'd use these big words, and well, boy, how did you how do you know that, and stuff. So they can come up with different things. So it's kind of neat what they're able to do and say sometimes. It's kind of like here, there's a truck that tried to go under an underpass, overpass, whatever you want to call it, tried to go over and it got stuck in there and wedged in there. And you had the cops there, and you had all the people that supposed to know everything. They're trying to figure out how to get that out, and they hum-hawed around. And there'd been a little 10-year-old boy rode his bike up there to see what was going on, and he watched a while, and these guys were, well, if we do this or that, and the boy says, well, maybe just let the air out of the tires and it'll settle down. And so, these supposedly guys that knew it all, they couldn't figure it out, but a little 10-year-old boy had the right idea, knew what to do. And so is kind of like the teacher that took the kids into a post office and was telling them about this and that. They just 6, 7-year-old kids, and and they had a bunch of posters on the wall, and they had, well, what's these about, and teacher said, well, these are people they're looking for. They're bad people that's done bad things, and they're looking for these people. And little boy says, well, why didn't they keep him here while they had when they took their picture? So I mean, they just simple things. And anyway, the way kids look at it. And our education system is 60 years ago, we was kind of at the top of the list for industrialized nations on education, and now we're closer to the bottom just because of what they're teaching and not teaching in our school system. And so that's where, these Christian schools, charter schools, homeschooling I think is going to be beneficial stuff. And, and kids, young people can do some pretty amazing things. Think of David. He was maybe 13 or 14 when he killed Goliath, the giant. Thomas Jefferson, when he was 14, he was ambassador to France. They sent him to France to be our ambassador. Could you imagine sending some of these kids that's got these weird hairdos and tattoos all over them and earrings hanging everywhere to go to be an ambassador for the United States, and especially with girl gymnasts, when they're 13, 14, 15, they can be some of the best gymnasts in the world. So they can do it when they're young. And spelling bees are just young teenage kids that are doing the spelling. They have words that we never even thought of or heard of, but they're able to spell them. And we had a boy in our town there. He was 14. He was real good on a skateboard, and some of the group he went with, they sent him down to South America, to I think Brazil or Argentina, and they put on a demonstration of how with some skateboards, but they also was able to share testimonies and talk about Jesus. And up here they wouldn't hardly let them into a school, but down there they closed school, and they said they had over 10,000 kids at a time come and watch and listen to these young people. So, God was able to use these 14-year-old kids to get a message across that probably an adult wouldn't. So we had just thinking of, been a number of years ago when my mother-in-law died, and we was going down there, and we was just south of Junction City, going out there, and we come up on a wreck. It just happened, and it was a man that had is a Hispanic man, and had 3 boys in there, troubled boys, and they was in their early teens, and I think he had a heart attack. And anyway, he rolled the pickup, and the boys weren't hurt too bad. We got one of them sitting on there and on the pickup, and it was after dark, and I did CPR on the guy, but I knew he was dead, but you try. And we talked to the kids, and a farmer come down that seen going on, the lights and stuff, and he called the law or whoever. But just talking to that one boy a little bit, and he wanted to borrow a flashlight. They was troubled kids. This guy was working with troubled kids. And so he got my flashlight, and he went back looking for something, and he found, he's looking for the guy's Bible. And he found the Bible, and he come, and he opens this big guy's hand, puts his Bible in his hand. So, this guy had to have an impact on these boys' lives that, he gave them a message. And sometimes we don't know, we might talk to some young people that don't seem to be paying attention or whatever, but it might be enough to make a difference. And, what do you think, how you think Jesus feels today about what's going on, what's happening to our kids and what's going on? I heard a story. This happened back in, I think is in 1978 in Albania. There was a pretty big earthquake. And this young man, he had a boy that was in school. And after the earthquake, his house wasn't hurt too bad, and he went down into town where the school was. And it was, I think it was a 3-story school house, and it all collapsed, and it was down. And he went over he knew about where his son's room would have been, and he starts digging. Of course, there's other people around there digging and stuff too. And this was in the morning, late morning. And he dug, and finally dark come, and a lot of them says, "You just will give up." Nope, I'm not going to give up. I told my son I'd be there for him. And his son was like 8 or 9, just pretty young. And he kept on, and all through the night he dug and trying to get through. And, maybe some police or firemen come and told him, well, it's no use, And all night he dug, and next morning he was still out there digging. And finally, late that next day, he heard some noises. He kept calling out for his son, and heard some kids down below. And he called out, and his son answered him. And he said his son, there was about 4 or 5 kids trapped in this one little spot. And he kept telling these other kids, he says, don't worry, my dad will find me. He said he'd always be there. He'd find me. And, he did. He found him alive and these others. But, when you think about that, he didn't give up. His son had faith in him. He didn't quit having that faith, even though, if he was trapped under whatever for 30 hours, it would be pretty devastating. But, just thinking, we have a Father that's not going to give up on us. No matter how bad, how far away we get, what we get into, He's going to be there pulling for us. And, how many fathers today would maybe go through what this father went through? Or how many kids out there would be, oh yeah, my father will come. I know he will. He said he would. And to have that kind of faith. And but we got a Father that's like that He won't give up on us. We just don't want to give up on Him, because He'll always be there for us. Let's pray. Dear God, we do thank You for Your word. We thank You for Your love for us. We thank You for Jesus, that You sent Him here to die for us, to die in our place, dear God. And no matter how bad things get, and it's hard to see what's happening to our kids today, what's going on in these schools, and it's just unimaginable, dear God. But we know that they're in your hands like we are, that you're there for them, and no matter what happens here, we have a future in heaven with you. And we just need to remember that. And if there's something we can do to help with these kids, it's whether it's show up and get the right school board members, the right leaders, to go vote, whatever it's going to take, dear God, just help us to give us the wisdom, the knowledge to know, and be willing to do it. And again, we just ask you to continue to work in this country, even though we've turned our back on you, dear God, that you're still there for us, and just help us to make the right decisions and do the right things. We just thank you now. We just ask this in Jesus' precious name.